In this video, I'm looking at the BLON BL-Max. This is the successor to the hugely popular, well, it's one of the successors to the hugely popular BL-03 earphone. Let's see if it stacks up. Let's get it. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews. So here is the BL-Max. And yeah, you can see why they didn't call it the BL Mini, because these things are pretty bloody huge. But let's have a look at the shell, and there they are. And as you can see, it's a pretty substantial shell, and it feels substantial in the hand as well. Now this is a dual dynamic driver unit. It's got a single 10mm dynamic driver for the bass, and it's got a single 6mm dynamic driver for the highs. So I'm not sure where the crossover point is, but anyway, there you have it. That is the configuration. So right off the bat, I want to talk, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the physical design of this IEM. Now, it's going to freak a lot of people out probably. It does look a little bit unusual. It is kind of on the large side of things, but I tell you what, I actually find these earphones pretty comfortable. You do have to work a bit to find the right size ear tips, because once again, like the BL-03, they've got a fairly short nozzle, but apart from that, they actually fit pretty good. The noise isolation is excellent. It's definitely above average. You can, if you've got some music playing, you're not going to hear much else of what's going on around you, that's for sure. And then we've got, once again, this QDC type hooded connector. Let's quickly talk about the cable for a second. It is the same one that comes with the BL Mini, I believe, and it's pretty nice. It's got this smooth, clear PU sheath on it, and it handles well. It doesn't have microphonics. It's nice and smooth. It doesn't tangle. I like this a lot. It would be nice to see KZ and CCA and TRN at least use something more similar to this in their models. But anyway, I'm getting off track already. So let's get back to the BL-Max here. So have a look, there it is. And that's enough of that. Let's talk about how this guy sounds. And, well, I tell you what, it's a pretty sweet sounding little it's a pretty sweet sounding big IEM, I should say. Because yeah, it's obviously not little, but you know, in fact, it's very similar in sound to the BL-03 with a couple of key differences. Before I get into the comparison, I'm going to try and talk about this first, because I know almost not everybody, I mean, not everybody, there's a few people that haven't heard the BL-03. So let's talk about how the Max sounds first. It's loosely based on the Harman Target. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but that's what you get. It's close to the Harman Target. It's got a pretty elevated low end, nice sub bass response, fairly linear, even transition between the sub bass and the mid bass, so it's got a pretty powerful and authoritative low end on it. It's a smooth overall listen. It's not really upfront in terms of mid-range and vocals and things like that. It's a bit recessed, and the treble is somewhat relaxed, and it's a very smooth, non-fatiguing listen. But let's break it down a little bit further, and we'll start, as always, with the bass. Now, these have got a pretty kick-ass bass on it. I like it. Once you get those tips sorted out and you get your fit right, the bass is pretty nice. It is elevated, like I said. It's definitely not a bass head IEM. It leans slightly in that direction, but it still really doesn't reach bass head territory. But the speed of the bass is maybe a little bit on the slow side, or just average, I would say. It's definitely not bad. The bass control is pretty good. It doesn't distort or anything, and it's not an overpowering, or it's not a dominating bass. It plays pretty nicely with the mid-range and the treble. And then we get to the mid-range, and compared to the 03, I'm getting into my comparison already, but compared to the 03, the mids are a little bit more recessed on this, you still get that really mellifluous, is that even a word? You still get that beautiful, silky, sort of honey, smooth mid-range like you did with the BL-03. Maybe even more so on this one. Female vocals are a little bit softened. Male vocals sound pretty good, but again, they're just slightly recessed, which is what you kind of expect from a Harman light V-shaped signature. But the overall tone of the mid-range is pretty good. Note thickness is a little bit above neutral, so there's definitely some warmth there carried over from the bass and the lower mids. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the mid-range. It's a very engaging and musical type of sound. And then we come to the treble, and the treble, yeah, the treble is fairly relaxed. It kind of is concentrated mostly on the lower treble, and then it rolls off as you get into the upper treble. But then it jumps back up again, kind of like the Moondrop VDSF target. Yeah, that's right, VDSF. Kind of like that. It's got this nice smooth treble. The extension is pretty good, I would say, but the quantity of the treble, specifically the upper treble, is pretty subdued. So it's definitely not a bright IEM. It doesn't have a lot of sparkle or energy or precision up top, but it sounds fine, you know. It's not a dark sound. It's quite pleasant to listen to, but if you're a treble head, this one won't be for you. Likewise, I think if you're a bass head, this one won't suit you either. Don't get me wrong, when I say that there is definitely ample bass, you will not be missing it unless you are a certified bass head. But that pretty much sums up the sound signature of the BL-03. I like this, you know. I can listen to this all day, and I have done, and it doesn't bother me in the least. I find it quite enjoyable. I would like to see perhaps the mids just a little bit more up front and forward in the mix, but apart from that, I don't really have any complaints. I could say, you know, oh, would mind a bit more forward treble as well, just so you get a little bit more micro detail and a little bit of sparkle there. But you know, overall, I think this is a pretty good IEM, and if it weren't for this kind of awkward shape, I think it would be generating a lot more interest than it has. But people are a bit wary of a design like this, although, you know, I think it looks pretty decent. It kind of looks like a bit of silver jewelry, in fact. So let's get into this comparison with the BL-03, and to make things real simple and real obvious, I'm just going to throw up the frequency response here, and there you can see the BL-Max has just got a little bit more, it's got a less rolled off sub bass. It's got more emphasis on that very low end, and you can definitely feel that. It's got a beautiful, nice, hefty sub bass, and I like that in an IEM. And then you get a slightly recessed mid-range, very similar in curve to the BL-03. And in the treble, there's actually a little bit more treble energy on the BL-Max. You can see it's not much, but it's just enough. And what that basically does is it counterbalances that extra bit of bass in there. So you get, the end result is a sound signature that's very similar to the BL-03, but it's a little bit more dynamic, I suppose you could say. It's just got a bit more bass, a little bit more treble. However, it does mean that the mid-range is slightly more recessed. Now, in terms of technicalities, I don't know, I might even say the BL-Max comes out slightly ahead in soundstage, probably, you know, that due to that little bit of extra treble energy. And it's just a thing with V-shaped IEMs. You tend to get a bigger soundstage, you tend to get a bit more space in the mid-range, as opposed to something like the BL-03, which has a more forward mid-range, and that sort of closes the soundstage in a little bit. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. That is the BLON BL-Max, and it is a pretty decent IEM. Like, I don't know what to say. I still prefer the BL-03, but as I've mentioned, and a lot of people have mentioned, it is a little bit finicky when it comes to fit and ear tips. It's got, again, that fairly short nozzle, a little bit narrow as well, so it can be pardon me, it can be somewhat of a challenge to find some ear tips that actually fit securely on that nozzle, because it is a bit narrow. So yeah, look, I love the sound. It's not perfect. It could be a little bit better, but I think most people on the street, not talking about audiophiles specifically, but your general guy and girl on the street, they would love the sound of this. I think they sound really pleasant and nice and engaging, but due to the shape, some of the issues that it has, it was never going to be a hit. So that's yeah, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, Parfam audiophile style, and if you're new to the channel and you want to see more reviews like this in the future, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and until next time, see you later.